Dumelang yet again. Welcome to this special edition of Current Review on Central News. My name is Angel Tekiso, and today we will be getting into a heated political storm that's got South Africans talking. It's our 75th episode, and we do have an exclusive sit down with Nhlamulo Ndhlela, the national spokesperson for the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, better known as the MK. So now the MK party dropped a bombshell statement calling out the Democratic Alliance for what they are labeling a hypocritical U-turn on the proposed VAT increase. They do say that the DA has gone from shouting no to VAT hikes to quietly agreeing to a 0.5% rise this year and another next year, all in exchange for the ANC scrapping laws like the Bila Act and the Expropriation Act. Mr. Nhlamulo, good morning and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers.
All right, siyabamkela kuhlelo lethu le current review. Let's jump straight into the conversation today. A statement was issued yesterday calling the DA shift on the VAT hike a shameless U-turn. It did say that they have gone from marching against the VAT hikes to writing for marching into reportedly writing the finance minister, saying they will be back at it if the ANC dishes the Bila and Expropriation Act. What are your takes on what is driving this flip-flop? Is it politics or is it just something deeper at play?
Well, I mean, this is just a clear demonstration that there is no so-called government of national unity. And more so that it's not in the interests of the majority of our people who continue to be impoverished and who continue to be jobless. What you're finding here is political parties that are trying to drive their own personal agendas as opposed to driving and serving the people. And they're now starting to use, in effect, the vote of the people that voted them into parliament in the first place and voted them into power. They're now starting to barter and starting to transact with people's lives. And that's exactly what it is. You can't want to do a trade-off of acts that ought to be changing people's lives in terms of education. Just because, your constituency, being the DA, is the least affected. The DA represents a constituency and an electorate that would not necessarily have or feel much of a pinch when it comes to the VAT increase because they serve the rich. Whereas it's going to be the poorest of the poorest who already are strained based on the situation that they find themselves with this country and in this economy. So, and you'll also recall that the DA also serves white interest and corporate interest. So they reduced, you'll recall, the VAT by 2% under the administration, Ramaphosa's administration. It's under this same administration that VAT would have actually gone up by 2 basis points. Because remember, when he came in, it was 14%. It's 15% now. And before you know it, with this incremental increase of 0.5 basis points over a year, we're going to be sitting at 16% VAT. And who does it affect? Us. Now, what's also a point to note, for the first time, because of the SRD grant, the Social Relief and Distress Grant, Black people or the Black buying power has increased phenomenally. So, I mean, we're sitting at about 1.8 trillion in buying power. And remember that the same grants are coming from the fiscus. And who does it impact? The same people that say they've contributed towards VAT. I mean, they've contributed towards tax. And now what they're doing by increasing VAT is that they're clawing back that power and that money because they know that it's going to be a direct impact on the poorest of people. And that's the best way of reclaiming that SRD 1.8 trillion buying power that Black poor people are sitting with. Because it's for the first time that we find ourselves in this situation. It's because of that. But if they were to come and resolve the issue of the budget, which is quite honest, when we say that this budget is lazy, it was crafted by lazy thinkers. They never really applied their minds here. There's a number of ways they could actually resolve the issue of the shortfall. One of those, simple one, is the fact that when it comes to how they've administered funds in this government, there's so much fruitless and wasteful expenditure. 120 billion rands alone. There is illicit financial flows leaving our country. Um, Millions and hundreds of billions of rands. We are sitting with an austerity-based budget that is encumbered with interests in terms of loans that we've taken from IMF and World Bank. I mean, if you look at how much we are servicing that debt, 554 billion rands every year just to service debt. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then, so you want to tax people, and then today you say, okay, by the way, let's not forget there's something called electricity, and then you increase it. As of today, it's kicking in 12.7%. So where is all this money coming from? Where do they expect the poorest of people to actually even be paying for a service they don't even get? So it's what's happening here between the DA and the ANC is a clear indication that this is just pure politicking. They're not there for the interest of the people. And that's why we've always said some controversies, or we're the best option for the people because we speak on behalf of the people, and our programs will be focused on the poorest of people in this country.
So now that you have listed how this increase will affect the poor as well as the middle class working, I want us to talk solutions. You are pushing for a wealth tax on the richest, 5% higher company taxes on big corporates, and also beefing up SARS to claw back that 800 billion rands lost to tax dodgers every year. It does sound bold, but some might say it's a pipe dream in this economy. How do you convince South Africans and maybe even the parliament that this can work without scaring off investments?
Good point. So here's the thing. We need to bring efficiencies in terms of how we collect tax. Remember that 800 billion is sitting with who? White monopoly capital companies. It's not sitting with black poor people. It's sitting with the elite. It's sitting with the richest and the wealthiest of people in this country. And if we and the only reason that money is not being clawed back or collected is because of the fact that you have a DA there that's part of this administration, and they know that they can in effect influence processes to ensure that either they get cuts in terms of the amounts that they're supposed to be paying in, or they actually delay paying. And that has a direct impact on the fiscus. So once we bring in provisions and proper controls and systems within SARS, like what happened under Tom Moyane in this case, where he collected a record of over 1.3 trillion. I mean, why is it that we can't do it under this administration? That's the first one. The second is when it comes to issues of investors and so on and so forth. Investors, one of the things is South Africa is certainly a country that is plush for investment. There's a lot of opportunity here. The biggest issue is not the issue of tax. The biggest issue here is the deindustrialization that has come with the likes of load shedding. So you can't establish a business or a factory and want to invest in manufacturing of cars here if the biggest issue you're going to be faced with in terms of a production line is the lack of electricity. So one of the things that we need to do, firstly, is to stabilize our electricity grid. And then work out models and programs for investors to come in. The issue of tax, we need to focus on specifically the local wide monopoly capital owned companies. They owe the largest amount of tax as it is. So, and once we can bring in those kind of controls and ensure that there is no illicit financial flows, because that's another thing. Illicit financial flows of money is leaving the country where they ought not to be leaving the country. The other issue, which is also a solution, is that we also need to put royalties on some of our minerals. Why can't we put royalties on some of our minerals? And that they ensure that there's beneficiation for our people and the country and this economy to ensure that there's also job creation locally. So the other solution that we have is that we need to have a network of state-owned banks. And what do we mean by that? So we need to have banks that are dedicated, for instance, to fund agricultural programs. We need to have banks that are there to fund youth entrepreneurial programs. We need a bank that's going to be funding women-based programs and businesses. And all of those need to be state-owned. And because right now there's too much of a dependency on the mainstream commercial banks, and they don't have any interest in ensuring economic development and skills creation, because they're no longer the kind of corporate citizen that cares, quite honestly, for our people. Over the past 7 years, our people have been indebted, middle class and lower income. They've been indebted by virtue of these same banks giving them microloans. And then it just continues to be a conundrum. So that is important. That's why it's important that if we're going to create a base for job creation, you need small businesses. And in order to get small businesses, you need to have funding programs for those small businesses, because that's how you create jobs. Small businesses are the vortex of the momentum for any job creation program. And that's why that becomes key. And from an investment perspective, I think I've clarified as to how we could actually even leverage our bilateral agreements within BRICS. There's a lot of member state countries that want to come on board. There's many of them that we know we could trade with. There's many of them that are very interested in investing in our country and various programs, whether it be oil and gas, healthcare, and so on and so forth. So from an investment perspective, just off the back of our relationships with the BRICS countries, there is no reason why, we can't work at a program that also takes into consideration any issues that like to raise pertaining to investments in our country.
So now there has been a response, or rather a defense from the DA, and I would like to get your thoughts on this. The DA's Karabo Kgakgao has been on the airways saying that they are not caving. They want a budget that grows the economy, not one that taxes us into poverty. They have also suggested cutting ghost workers at PRASA or fixing Cape Town's harbors instead of the VAT hikes. Does any of that hold water for you, or is it just a smokescreen of their real agenda?
For them to be focusing on such, quite honestly, it's if you look at 60 billion rand shortfall, and then they want to come and talk about ghost employees at PRASA, that just tells you that these people are living in a different cloud. They're living in cloud nine. They don't understand the government machinery. If they were going to talk about bringing about and holding any accounting officer that contributed towards the 120 billion rand of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and then criminalizing that because it is wasteful expenditure of people's money, then we're talking. If they're going to talk about increasing corporate tax, which they won't, then we're talking. If they're going to talk about increasing the wealth tax, which they won't, then we're talking. But they will go and choose frivolous sideshow small programs, which are, more so political than realistic. We need real solutions. Don't come and tell us about PRASA and ghost workers at PRASA. I mean, how much are you going to save from that? And how is this going to help us? What you need to be talking about is to say, well, there was 2.6 billion rand that was paid by PRASA last year, November. What happened to that money? That's 2.6 billion rand. Tell me what happened to that money, and let's go after that money. Don't come and tell us about sideshow frivolous things, because that's a clear indication that these people don't know what they're doing. And the sooner these people leave government and bring in competent people that understand how the government machinery works and what is needed for our people, the better.
All right, just to get into what could be the next step, you have called on workers, students, churches, as well as grassroots movements to join the MK party in resisting this VAT hike with the budget vote tomorrow. What's your game plan? Are we talking marches? Are we talking legal challenges or something else to stop what you call this gravy train of the elite?
Yes, it is a gravy train of the elite, and it needs to be stopped very quickly. This train called the so-called GNU train. And what we're doing is we're mobilizing civil society. We're engaging with various other progressive parties, religious community, traditional community, and so on and so forth, to come on board, because these are the people that are most affected. The people on the ground, the poorest of people, the people we are close to, the people we know that we live with on a daily basis, and we understand their plights and their challenges, are the people that we're mobilizing to stand up against this VAT increase. Now, as to whether it's going to go ahead, we've made it categorically clear that we will not entertain any sort of increase in VAT, incremental or not, even if they were to increase it by 0.1%, we are saying no. So yes, we are going to be mobilizing, and we have a number of programs that we're working on leading up to, for instance, the 1st of May. So we don't want this implemented whatsoever, and we'll continue to resist.
All right, Nhlamulo, before we close it off, I believe there is a lot of South African who have lost so much hope when it comes to politics. In order to get people to still believe and trust in politics, South Africans are also hurtful. They say unemployment rates are high, load shedding, and now there's this VAT drama that has been added. Your statement did say that the ANC and the DA are puppets in the same show. After all this back and forth, why should people trust the Umkhonto weSizwe party or any party in particular to actually fight for them in the future and in the present?
You know, what's interesting about the points that you made is you said there's joblessness. You then mentioned VAT increase. Now there's another introduced VAT. Now there's crime. And then look at what happens with the situation. And then you have, you mentioned another one, electricity woes. Every single one of those that you've mentioned have been introduced by this government of national unity, by this government, by this ANC, this government, this administration under Ramaphosa. If you go back to Ramaphosa's predecessor, who is our president, all those things were not there. So when it comes to who you can trust, we've demonstrated through our leadership that we are competent and that we can serve the people. And more so now because it would be outside of the ambits of a party that is clearly bought, which is the ANC, who doesn't implement its policies that the people voted for them to implement. Why? Because they are tied to a GNU, when they could have, in actual fact, worked with us as Black parties for us to advance our people's plight and our people's agenda. But instead, they chose to go into bed and fraternize with racist white people who are elitists and who are more focused on advancing the agenda of the white monopoly capital control, as opposed to seeing the plight of a Black child move forward into a greater future. So all the issues that are being brought to us right now is under the Cyril Ramaphosa administration. We never had these issues. We never had situations where you're going to have to negotiate an act, and then start to barter with an act so that you can drive your own agenda. No. So this is what the ANC has brought upon themselves. This is what the ANC has brought upon Black people who voted for them, because now, just to demonstrate to you, they don't respect their voters. They've taken this totally lightly, and it's demonstrative in how they have been conducting themselves politically. So we're saying we're not, this is not about politics as Umkhonto weSizwe. We're about civil activism, not politics. And we certainly are not going to be politicking with the power. We are going to drive a political agenda of our people as mandated by our people, not politicking for clout or street cred, as you're seeing right now. We're focused on civil activism because we understand that people on the ground don't eat politics. Poverty doesn't eat. I mean, you can't fulfill a person's stomach by talking politics. You need to give them a job. You need to ensure you give them programs and access to income. And that's what we're focused on.
And now that, before I let you go, now that you have mentioned civil activism, there has been several marches happening today, currently in different provinces regarding the hashtag Justice for Kwekwe. And I would like to get your thoughts from the MK, and also what is the MK saying and what are the plans from the MK in order to make sure that justice is served for this young girl?
So we are participating in a lot of the marches. We also have our own marches throughout the country. And we are calling upon, and here's the one thing again. The president, Mr. Ramaphosa, referred to in his country and under his administration, there'll be a Tinswalo. And he painted this Tinswalo, I'm sure you recall when he delivered his budget speech, his State of the Nation last year, I think, if you recall. And he spoke about this amazing country that he wants to build for a Tintswalo that is safe. It's unfortunate. It was as if he actually jinxed every single child in this country. Because after he mentioned that, look at what happened with the poisoning of children. The children that died last year on Child Month, on Children's Month. Look at how many children are actually disappearing. Look at the Jocelyn situation. Our children are not safe in our own country, the same country that Mr. Ramaphosa kept saying that this is the country he envisions for a Tintswalo. All these other kids, are those the Tintswalos that he envisioned? Is it the kind of Tintswalo that he would have envisioned at 7 years old of age, being raped? What kind of society are we in? What kind of society are we living in here? And it's because there's no proper, stringent, tough laws. I mean, under the administration of his predecessor being our president, President Zuma, yes, naturally, we know that these kind of things happen in society. But if there's one thing, people and thugs and criminals knew it was a completely different environment, than what we have here. Today, there's so much lawlessness. And you ask yourself, why the reason there's lawlessness is because the president himself is lawless. He's found with monies in his couch. So how are people going to respect anything that he says as our leader when he himself has been found with monies at his farm, in a form of hundreds and hundreds of millions of rands, if you convert it, and then he agrees that yes, he did have that money, but he's not in jail and he's not being processed. So it just shows you that the lawlessness starts right at the top. If we can't hold him accountable, then he can't expect, and neither can we as society expect, that criminality will not rear its ugly head like it is right now in every single form of our society. So, the sooner we can get an administration that is based on civil activism, that's not going to be politicking, and that's going to be looking after the interests of our people, both from a security and a job security perspective, then can we start to change this country. But as it is, the situation of Twetwe is atrocious. It should not exist here. And we believe that all sex offenders must be marked. We should know geolocation of every single sex offender. And that's it. Once you've created a sexual offense, we need to be able to track you, because you're now no longer just a normal person of society. You're actually you're a threat to society. And so such threats need to be monitored on a 24-hour basis. And that's what we would do as Umkhonto weSizwe. We will ensure that every single one that is an offender of any sort, we ensure that you actually don't even stay anywhere near where there's children, anywhere near where there's going to be schools. And so we need to ensure that you become an outcast, so that people think twice before they do those kind of things. And that's what we need to do, because we can't have a situation where our children are going to be growing up in this kind of a society. No, never.
All right. Thank you, Nhlamulo, for joining us. Before we let you go, any last words from your side?
The last words from our side is that the GNU is collapsing. South Africans, gear yourself from Umkhonto weSizwe to govern. We are steadfast and we are resolute in terms of what we want to do, which is change our country for our people. We want to have free education for our kids. We want to bring back job creation opportunities. We want to bring back a stable electricity grid. And we will ensure that all women in our country have access to a bank that will be for them to fund their programs. All youth will have an opportunity to become entrepreneurs as opposed to be employees, because that's what we want to do. And that's how we're going to bring about industrialization into our country. But that can only happen when this GNU has collapsed and Umkhonto weSizwe comes in and takes power. And we are going to be taking power. We are going to be running this country. And we're going to be using civil activism-based programs for our people just to change our people's lives. And that's what we're about.
All right. Thank you so much, Nhlamulo, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
That was the Umkhonto weSizwe Party's national spokesperson, Nhlamulo Ndhlela, on unpacking the DA's U-turn as well as the fight for the poor. Right about now, we will be closing off the conversation and getting into the next one. My name is Angel Tekiso. Stay tuned for more.